A Chinese car company just built an engine that gets 106 miles per gallon. Guinness World Records flew in, ran the tests, and made it official. That is not a typo. That is not a concept car sitting behind velvet ropes at a futuristic auto show. That is a real production car, rolling off an assembly line right now, that you could theoretically drive from New York to Chicago on a single tank of gas, and still have fuel to spare. To put that into perspective, the average new car sold in America today gets somewhere between 28 and 35 miles per gallon. The Toyota Prius, the car that basically defined fuel efficiency in the minds of American drivers for 2 decades, gets around 57 miles per gallon in the city. 106 miles per gallon is nearly double that. And the company behind it is not Toyota. It is not Honda. It is not Ford, General Motors, or Tesla. It is a Chinese company called Geely. If you have never heard that name before, pay close attention, because by the time you finish watching this, you will realize why every major automaker in Detroit, Tokyo, and Stuttgart is quietly sweating right now. Here is what makes this story even crazier. The man who built this company started out making refrigerator parts with $3,000 he borrowed from his family. The engine his team just created does something that Formula One engineers have spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to achieve. And this technology is already heading toward American roads through car brands you know, trust, and see on US highways every single day. We are looking at a breakthrough that does not just challenge the electric vehicle narrative, it completely rewrites the rules of what an internal combustion engine can do. To understand how a Chinese automaker suddenly shocked the world with a 106 mile per gallon engine, you have to look at the man who built the company from scratch. His name is Lee Shufu. He was born in 1963 in a small farming village in Zhejiang Province, China. He grew up in a world where nobody was dreaming about supercars, advanced engineering, or setting automotive world records. But Lee Shufu had an absolute obsession with making things. And he had one character trait that would define his entire life. He simply refused to take no for an answer. In 1986, he borrowed about $3,000 from his family and opened a tiny manufacturing business. He was not building anything high-tech or glamorous. He was making basic parts for refrigerators. It was small, unglamorous work, but it gave him his first real taste of manufacturing. By 1994, he moved into making motorcycles. And then, in 1997, he made an announcement that literally made the global auto industry laugh out loud. He announced that he was going to start building cars. At the time, he had no experience in the auto industry, no assembly plant designed for cars, no engineering background, and zero backing from major international investors. When reporters asked him how he expected to build complex automobiles from scratch, he famously brushed it off and said that a car is basically just 4 wheels, an engine, and 2 couches. Industry insiders wrote him off as delusional, but Lee Shufu did not care. In 2001, his company, Geely, became the very first private Chinese automaker licensed to produce cars in China. That alone was a massive achievement. But Lee Shufu was looking way beyond China. In 2007, he wrote a formal letter to Ford Motor Company offering to buy Volvo, the legendary Swedish automaker that Ford owned at the time. Ford completely ignored him. He did not give up. In 2008, he flew directly to the Detroit Auto Show and tried to pitch Ford executives in person. Once again, Detroit brushed him off. So he waited, built up his capital, and came back in 2010 with something Ford could not ignore: $1.8 billion in cold, hard cash. The farmer's son who got laughed at in Detroit walked out of Ford's headquarters owning Volvo outright. The automotive world was stunned. But Lee Shufu kept moving. In 2018, he quietly bought nearly 10% of Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz, making him the single largest individual shareholder in one of the most prestigious luxury brands on the planet. Today, Geely Group owns Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, Lynk & Co., and holds massive stakes across the global auto market. The kid who started with $3,000 making refrigerator parts now controls an international automotive empire. And that same ruthless engineering ambition is what brought us to the breakthrough engine everyone is talking about today. Before we look inside this record-breaking engine, we have to talk about the massive problem it was built to solve. Because to understand why this technology matters so much right now, you have to look at what is happening with pure electric cars. For the past 5 years, we were told a very simple story. We were told that gas engines were dead, hybrids were just a temporary patch, and every driver in America would be forced into a fully electric vehicle, whether they liked it or not. And look, EVs are impressive pieces of tech. Instant acceleration, zero tailpipe emissions, quiet rides. But living with a pure electric car day to day in the real world has turned out to be a lot more frustrating than the flashy commercials suggested. Start with charging anxiety. The TV ads make it look seamless. You pull up, plug in, and walk away. But on an actual American road trip, even at the fastest superchargers available, getting your battery from 10% back up to 80% still means sitting in a parking lot for 20 to 40 minutes. That is not a quick gas station stop where you get in and out in 4 minutes. That is sitting around waiting, which becomes a real nightmare when you have kids in the back seat and a real schedule to keep. Then there is cold weather. EV batteries hate cold temperatures. When winter hits and the temperature drops below freezing, most electric cars lose anywhere from 30% to 40% of their advertised driving range. That 300-mile range you spent $60,000 on suddenly becomes 180 miles on a freezing January morning in Ohio or Michigan. And then comes the elephant in the room: battery replacement costs. Electric car batteries degrade over time, just like the battery in your iPhone. When an EV battery pack finally fails out of warranty, replacing it can easily cost anywhere from $10,000 to over $20,000. That single repair bill can wipe out every penny you saved on gas over 5 years of driving. Beyond the driveway, there are huge supply chain and grid issues. Mining the lithium, cobalt, and nickel required for massive EV batteries involves massive environmental disruption and severe human rights concerns in places like the Congo. At the same time, the US power grid was simply not built to handle millions of electric vehicles all plugging in at 7 p.m. after work. Upgrading that infrastructure will take decades and hundreds of billions of dollars. All of this means that for millions of average American drivers, switching to a pure EV is not an easy upgrade. It is a risky trade-off that forces them to change how they live, drive, and spend money. So Geely asked a different question. What if, instead of forcing every driver to change their entire lifestyle, someone figured out how to squeeze so much efficiency out of a traditional engine that the old trade-offs vanished overnight? In April 2026, at the Beijing Auto Show, Geely officially took the stage and unveiled the centerpiece of their new intelligent hybrid platform, an engine called the BHE15. On paper, the specs sound modest. It is a 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine. That is a small engine, the exact size you would expect to find in a basic, cheap commuter car. Nothing about its physical size suggests anything revolutionary. But what this engine does with a single drop of gasoline has never been seen before in any road car in human history. Geely announced a certified thermal efficiency rating of 48.41%. Now, that sounds like complex engineering jargon, so let us translate that into plain, simple English. Every combustion engine on Earth wastes energy. When gasoline burns inside your car's engine, not all of that chemical energy gets turned into motion to push the car forward. In fact, most of it is completely wasted. It escapes as raw heat through the exhaust pipe, gets radiated off the engine block, or is lost to friction between moving metal parts. Thermal efficiency is simply the percentage of fuel energy that actually gets converted into real mechanical power to turn the wheels. The average gas-powered car sitting in American driveways today operates at around 30% to 35% thermal efficiency. That means up to 70% of the gas you pay for at the pump is instantly wasted as useless heat blowing into the air. Toyota spent 30 years refining its hybrid systems to solve this exact problem. The high-efficiency engine inside the Toyota Prius achieved roughly 41% thermal efficiency. For decades, that 41% number was considered the absolute peak of automotive engineering. Nobody believed a mass-production passenger car could go significantly higher. Geely did not just beat that record, they smashed through it, hitting 48.41%. Guinness World Records brought in independent testing teams, verified the data, and officially certified it as the highest thermal efficiency ever recorded for a production car engine. To understand how insane that 48.41% figure really is, look at Formula One. Formula One race cars are the most technically advanced, outrageously expensive, and obsessively engineered combustion machines ever created. Global racing teams spend hundreds of millions of dollars every single year just to gain a fraction of a percent in efficiency. The multi-million-dollar hybrid power units used in Formula One run at around 50% thermal efficiency. Geely built a commercial engine for everyday family cars that operates within less than 2 percentage points of a multi-million-dollar Formula One race engine. They did this by re-engineering the entire combustion process. They boosted the ignition energy, redesigned the intake ports to force air and fuel to tumble together at extreme speeds, and applied low-friction coatings to every internal surface. The result is an engine that squeezes almost twice as much usable work out of a gallon of gas as a standard car. And when you drop an engine with that kind of physics into a real vehicle, the real-world numbers get mind-blowing. Having an efficient engine running on an engineering test bench is one thing. Putting that engine inside a heavy family sedan and driving it down a public highway is a completely different story. To turn that 48.41% thermal efficiency into real-world performance, Geely paired the BHE-15 engine with a 308 horsepower electric motor and managed the entire powertrain using an artificial intelligence software system. This AI system continuously monitors your speed, the road incline, and driving conditions in real time, constantly shifting work between the gas engine and the electric motor so that not a single milligram of fuel is wasted. They dropped this hybrid setup into a sleek sedan called the Geely Galaxy M8 and took it to a testing circuit in Hainan, China, for an official standardized fuel economy run. The vehicle recorded an average fuel consumption of just 2.22 liters per 100 kilometers. Converted into American numbers, that is 106 miles per gallon. Guinness World Records verified that result independently as well, awarding Geely a second official world record. Let us put 106 miles per gallon into context for an American driver. A standard gas car with a 15-gallon tank getting 30 miles per gallon will take you roughly 450 miles before you have to pull into a gas station. That exact same 15-gallon gas tank at 106 miles per gallon gives you a driving range of approximately 1,590 miles on one single fill-up. That means you could fill your tank in Los Angeles, drive through Nevada, Utah, and Colorado all the way to Denver, turn around, and drive most of the way back to California without stopping for gas even once. To see why this sent shockwaves through the auto industry, look at what Toyota did back in 2024. Toyota took a brand new Prius on an official long-distance efficiency drive from Los Angeles all the way to New York City. It was a carefully planned showcase designed to prove that Japanese hybrid tech was still king. The Prius achieved an incredible 92.9 miles per gallon across the country, and automotive journalists celebrated it everywhere. Geely's production sedan beat Toyota's headline-grabbing record by over 12%. Geely spokesperson Victor Yang stood in front of reporters and declared that their hybrid technology will comprehensively surpass the Japanese automakers. That was a direct shot across the bow at Toyota and Honda, the two giants that have dominated the hybrid vehicle conversation for the past 30 years. It was a bold claim, but the verified numbers backed it up. And what makes Detroit and Tokyo even more nervous is that Geely is not the only Chinese company pulling off these numbers. Geely's record-breaking engine is a remarkable engineering accomplishment, but it did not happen in a vacuum. While American media and Western car companies were completely hyper-focused on the debate over pure electric vehicles, an entire coalition of Chinese automakers spent the last 5 years quietly revolutionizing hybrid technology. What is happening right now in China is not just one lucky company building a fast car. It is a coordinated industrial shift that is leaving legacy Western brands years behind. Take BYD, the massive Chinese company that already passed Tesla in global electric vehicle sales. In 2024, BYD released its fifth-generation hybrid system. That engine hit 46.06% thermal efficiency. While that is slightly behind Geely's record, BYD's hybrid cars can travel a combined distance of over 1,300 miles on a single tank of gas and a full battery charge. To put 1,300 miles into perspective for an American road trip, that is like filling up your tank in Miami, Florida, driving past Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia, and pulling into Boston, Massachusetts without stopping a single time for gas or electricity. Another Chinese automaker, Aito, launched its L7 sedan with a 45% thermal efficiency engine. Companies like Changan, SAIC, Chery, and Great Wall Motors have all rolled out production hybrids with total driving ranges exceeding 1,200 miles over the last 18 months. These are not wild concept cars sitting on display. These are real, affordable cars selling to millions of regular drivers right now. Meanwhile, where are the legacy giants? Toyota and Honda's absolute best production hybrid systems are still sitting at roughly 41% thermal efficiency. American automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis are largely relying on traditional gas engines that struggle to clear 35% efficiency. That gap between 35% and 48% is not a minor competitive difference. It is a generational divide. It is the technological equivalent of comparing a bulky old tube television to a modern 4K flat screen. The underlying physics and engineering have simply moved to a completely different level. Detroit and Japan spent decades operating under the assumption that hybrids were just a temporary bridge technology, a short-term step while everyone waited for pure electric cars to take over. Because they thought hybrids were temporary, Western companies stopped investing heavily in fundamental gas engine research. Chinese automakers realized something different. They realized that hyper-efficient hybrids were not just a temporary bridge, but the actual long-term answer for hundreds of millions of drivers who want lower fuel bills without the headaches, range loss, and charging delays of pure EVs. Now, Detroit and Tokyo find themselves falling behind on the exact technology that everyday car buyers actually want to purchase today. And if you think this massive technology gap is going to stay inside China, think again. Here is the part of the story that directly impacts drivers in the United States and across the Western world. Geely is not just a regional Chinese car company selling vehicles inside its domestic market. Geely is a massive global automotive conglomerate. Remember, Geely owns Volvo outright. They own Polestar. They own Lotus. They own the legendary British taxi brand. They run a joint partnership with Mercedes-Benz to build smart vehicles. And through a massive global powertrain joint venture called Horsepowertrain, Geely licenses its engine tech to major automakers around the globe. What does that mean for an American buyer? It means the technology inside this 106-mile-per-gallon engine is not going to stay trapped behind foreign borders. This hyper-efficient hybrid platform is already integrated into Volvo's future global product map. It is heading into European models over the next few years, and it will inevitably arrive in American dealerships wearing familiar, trusted badges like Volvo and Polestar. The engineering breakthroughs developed in Hangzhou will be sitting under the hood of vehicles parked in driveways across Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, and New York before the end of this decade. Think about what a 106 mile per gallon hybrid actually means for an everyday American household. It means pulling up to a gas pump roughly once every 6 weeks, instead of every single Sunday. It means taking a cross-country family road trip without frantically searching for an open, working high-speed charger in the middle of nowhere. It means zero winter range loss when temperatures drop below zero. It means no thousands of dollar home electrician bills to install an EV charger, and no constant fear of an out-of-warranty battery replacement bill down the road. You just get in, drive, and barely use any gas doing it. For Detroit, this is an existential wake-up call. The assumption in American executive boardrooms was that legacy gas engines were obsolete and that Western automakers could take their time building expensive electric trucks. But Geely just proved that the traditional internal combustion engine still had massive untapped potential, if you had the engineering bravery to completely redesign it from the ground up. The farmer's son who borrowed $3,000 to make refrigerator parts and got laughed at when he showed up at the Detroit Auto Show in 2008 just created the most fuel-efficient mass-production car engine in human history. And the legacy auto industry that ignored him is going to spend the next decade trying to figure out how to catch up. Now I want to hear from you. If you could buy a hybrid vehicle today that got 106 miles per gallon and gave you over 1,500 miles of range on a single tank, would that change your mind about buying a fully electric car? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a deep dive into the technology reshaping our world.